You're still in California, John, by the way, or you're back East Coast?
I'm home. I
You're home.
left last Wednesday. Yeah.
Got it.
You look like you're in the dark. You're in Europe?
No, no, I'm actually in San Francisco. I'm just facing,
Uh,
you know, the hallway of
oh,
our co-working space here.
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Looks like LeBron James is going to play for the Warriors.
What?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be
that's what I'm
interesting.
that's what I'm hearing or reading, just like breaking news as we get this webinar started. Something for people to talk about. What do you think about that?
Brandon's excited.
Exactly.
Hey everyone, thanks for being here. We are close to getting started, maybe a minute or two. I'll kick it off.
Well, looks like Jeremy is very good at optimizing the Zoom settings here.
He's done this before. Yeah. Okay, 10:03, let's do it. Everyone, really excited for you to be here today. Thank you for joining. I am Alex Agnew, and we've got a great lineup today with Florent and John to talk about the retail state of retail first EV charging report that we put together for y'all. Let's dive in with some quick introductions. I'll start us off. Alex Agnew with Electric Era on the business development and sales team. Been here now 2.5 years and work every day with retailers evaluating and deploying EV fast charging at their locations. John, then Florent.
Yeah, John Eichberger, Executive Director of Transportation Energy Institute. We are a nonprofit, non-advocacy research think tank uh, comprised of a leadership core from major oil companies, the EV equipment manufacturers, the CPOs, retailers, and everybody in between. So happy to be here and have a conversation about where the market is.
Alex, John, great to be with you today. I'm Florent, the co-founder and CEO of Paren. We are a software venture based out of San Francisco, and we specialized in data insights for the electric vehicle charging infrastructure.
Great. Thank you both. A little bit more about TEI here. Anything you want to highlight for the members on the call?
No, I think I covered it in my 5 seconds.
Oh, wow. Great. Well, I was hoping, to learn from you, like how you would introduce like TEI and then, like maybe build on that to
Should we
talk a
go
little bit more
back?
about Paren.
Oh, I
Uh,
can. I
okay,
can.
please. Yeah, John.
Yeah. So, okay, we've been around since 2013. We are,
Okay.
as I mentioned, a nonprofit, non-agency think tank. Our goal is to bring people together that don't always work together and don't always agree together on policy to really explore what's happening in the market. In 2020, we launched our Electric Vehicle Council, which is focused on infrastructure. Since we don't advocate, we really aren't pushing chargers. We're not pushing EVs. We're saying if EVs are going to grow market share, you have to have a charging system that works for the drivers, but also delivers a return on investment for the investor who's putting the chargers in. So our focus on the council is really how do we help the market uncover the tools to actually make money. And we actually been working with Paren for about 2 years now, analyzing their data and using that to help educate our members as well. So a little more exhaustive explanation of why we're here.
Great.
That was great. Now the bar is too high. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. So Paren is a software venture. We're based here out of San Francisco. I'm the co-founder and CEO, but there's also my co-founder, Bill Farrow, who is the chief data officer at Paren. And Bill has been driving an EV since 2012. He was one of the first owner of an EV on the East Coast. And both of us met, in 2023, 2024, thinking that, what the industry needs is probably richer and more reliable data insights. So we started working together, secured some early stage funding from an investor down the street, and eventually built a selection of data set that really help charge point operators, automakers, companies like John Sti organization to get a better understanding of not only where the stations are, but also what is the utilization or adoption of EV charging station. What are the prices enforced at every single one of the stations across the US? How they're reliable. We'll talk about that, throughout the report. We've been very excited to collaborate with the team at Electric Era and excited to deep dive into some of these metrics that we've shared, with the team.
Thanks, John. Yeah, and we are Electric Era. We build and operate EV fast charging hardware. You see a little bit on our factory down in the top right, some customers that we support. And the way that we kind of go to business is reliability first. Then we have some really exciting technology in the battery-backed capabilities. I saw some folks in the chat really interested in that. We can talk a little bit about that later. And then retail. We are very dialed in on the retail segment of this market and really believe that it is on the retailers to kind of gather the EV charging drivers and bring them to their locations as a way to kind of tie together refueling and shopping. And so let's dive in. We're going to talk about the report. We're going to talk about some key takeaways. We're going to look at how we slice the data, how we used that rich data set from Paren. And then one of the big things that I heard and we heard from work with TEI on the EV Council is like, hey, we need more real examples of the economics, real stations in the ground, charging cars. How are they doing? There's kind of this lack of visibility and lack of data in the industry on how these charging stations perform and how retailers and station operators make money on these things. And so I'm really excited to kind of get a little bit deeper into the weeds on energy costs, sessions per day, charging, and what that means from an economics perspective. Okay, so we put this report together because we really believe that EV charging at retail sites makes a lot of sense. The dwell time of an EV charging session is around 20 to 40 minutes. And that really aligns well with the dwell time of a number of different businesses, from gas stations, convenience stores, travel centers, all the way up to longer shopping trips at a mall or a grocery store. And so when we dove into the data, we looked at over 4,000 actual EV charging stations in the US. We looked at stations that have 100 kW or more. That was kind of our bar for the minimum station power that represents a fast charging session. And we looked at everything except Tesla data. And so the Tesla data is available. Florent will be very excited to share that it, yes, is available on the Paren platform. But we just looked at everything else. And so dozens of EV charging operators, as well as retailers themselves who've expanded into EV charging, all are included. It's a nationwide report. And so that's what we used as kind of the basis and foundation for this analysis. Anything
And
you want
this
to
report is
add?
on your website. I mean, I've seen that, pointing people, directing people, to the website. So it's up there and it's free. And I see
Yep.
that Jeremy is sharing the link to the report. Great. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. So key takeaways. We crunched the data, and the biggest finding from our analysis is that as the number of amenities close to an EV charging station increase, the utilization increases as well. We'll talk a little bit about how and why that happened. The way that we looked at near is there's stations that are immediately adjacent. That's the anchor store, whether that's a gas station, a convenience store, a grocery, quick service restaurant. There's one that is physically most proximate. Then we looked at zero point 0.1 miles and 0.25 miles to kind of build that radius of, okay, this is about as far as people would be willing to walk from their site. Um, Other findings look at the top performing amenity type, and that was grocery stores. And so maybe just to start, based on the amenity conversation and grocery being that top performer, John, what do you think here? Why and what does that mean for the EV charging industry?
Well, Alex, you started off by saying that the average dwell time is anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes. I think 31, 32 is the average we usually see with the Paren data. Where are you going to spend that time? We did a study 2 years ago, and we're doing another one right now on the customer experience to understand what people are looking for in a site. They want safe. Grocery stores are usually considered pretty safe. They want well lit. They want restrooms. They want amenities. They want to be able to do stuff while they're there. Now, a lot of people sit in the car and watch Netflix or whatever, but for those running errands and trying to maximize their time spent, a grocery store makes a lot of sense. There's also other amenities that you mentioned: convenience stores, gas stations, travel centers, other stores, big box shopping malls. It's about combining your time. If
Hmm.
we're used to 3 to 5 minute refuels of gasoline cars, we're looking at 20 to 30 minute commitment. Okay, how can I be productive? And how can I really take advantage of my time? I have to go to the grocery store anyways. Grocery stores usually within communities, not along highway rest areas or highway interchanges. So it doesn't surprise me at all that their utilization was quite high because they do satisfy and check a lot of those boxes that the driver's are looking for. One of the things that drivers also told us they wanted something open 24/7.
Mm.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, they say that, but quite frankly, if you look at the data, most of the charging happens between 12 and 6 o'clock in the afternoon.
Hmm.
Grocery stores are open. And so I just think
Yep.
it checks so many boxes and it provides a comfort and something to do while they're charging the car.
Hmm. Hmm. And Florent, one of the other things that we saw was the impact of reliability on a station. That bottom finding, reliable stations seeing a median of 17 sessions per day. Can you talk a little bit about the reliability score that Perrin puts together and how that influenced station utilization?
Yeah, absolutely. So we score reliability based on a lot of different attributes. We used to refer to reliability or the closest things was uptime. But a station being up doesn't necessarily mean that the station is working. We've been there, we've seen that green dot on a map, we've driven and hoping that that station will be running and delivering power, only to realize that something was not working once we arrived at the destination. So Paren came together with a different way of measuring reliability. And Bill has been working on factoring in multiple attributes such as, is a station up? That's one thing. Is a station delivering power? Power, that's another thing. What is the average time of people charging at that station? So you can go and connect, but if we see someone just connecting for 2 minutes or 1 minute, we don't believe that actually that's a reliable session, especially when we see like other charging stalls delivering consistent power with people staying, for
Mm.
30 minutes or so. So, we came with a scoring algorithm that really help us understand is that charging stall, and it's not a blanket, score over the station, is that charging ports working or not? And then we score that from 0 to 100, 100 being the maximum score. And then what we are seeing through the reports is that, you know, the reliable station, so the one with a score above 90,
Mhm.
had 17 sessions per day compared to the one that had a score that would be under 90, that would only have like 3 sessions per day. So people do remember when they have like that positive experience and they keep coming back, to the stations that I've been working in the past. So reliability is definitely key in driving people back to charging stations.
I think that's absolutely spot on. I mean, what we've been finding in some of the work we're doing, we're in the process of surveying customers now as well, is reliability is your table stakes.
Hmm.
If the chargers don't work, you can load up all the amenities and all the attributes and all the benefits you want. If that charger doesn't work, nothing matters. And
Yeah.
so we really need to be thinking about hitting that reliability nut and then adding in those competitive differentiators that will drive those customers back, create loyalty, create repeat visits in order to get those economics to pencil out. But if you're not reliable, you're really running way behind the eight ball.
The two kind of ties together from both of those I'm hearing is just overall customer experience. If you can deliver a reliable site, then you kind of unlock the opportunity to bring folks in, and then it's more of a competition between the other amenities nearby. And so let's we there's a lot more on the report. Jeremy linked it. I saw a couple good questions in the chat. Jeremy confirmed that yes, this webinar will be recorded. And Johannes asking, like, is site acquisition strategy going to change? Other questions about other amenity types. These are all really good questions. I think for electric era, specifically to Johannes's question, we are seeing more interest just generally from grocery stores who are seeing other folks like Walmart and Costco make pretty significant moves into this space. I kind of see this as a natural extension of the big box retailers and grocery retailers move into fuel in the decade or 2 decades ago. And in the same way that convenience stores 50, 80 years ago combined gasoline and the everyday staples that people were stopping by the store in the first place. So it, the convenience store industry and the travel center industry constantly evolve. I know John has some thoughts on this, but how you serve customers is constantly going to change. And so these findings are really interesting and causing a lot more folks, especially in the grocery industry, to reconsider and think about how this fits into their strategy.
I think, EV charging introduces a new definition of convenience.
Mm,
So I've been in the convenience space for 25 years, and it's always been about speed of service. It's always been like get them in, get them out, get them what they want, quickly get them on the road, selling them time, giving them time back. You're committing 20 to 30 minutes to recharge your vehicle. Okay, how am I leveraging that time? Which makes sense that groceries are leaning into it. But I think
mhm,
that definition of what's convenient, what's in the best interest of the customer is evolving as customers migrate to electric vehicles because they have to dedicate more time. If they're not charging at home, they're charging and probably have to dedicate more time. And so that definition of what is my optimum location, I
mhm.
think is evolving. And we
Yeah.
have to, as retailers, whatever business you're in, you got to think about the convenience. I mean, the EV customer has a different set of priorities than the gasoline customer.
Yep.
And you got to match those customers where they are and what they want.
Yeah. Good points. Okay.
I want to
We did
build
some. Oh,
briefly,
yeah.
Alex, sorry, on the comments, that I'm reading as well. So Dean is saying about, the Ford dealership experience providing a consistent experience, reliable charging experience, well-lit station as well. That's exactly, the winning factors for people, to come back over and over and charging at a destination. That consistency in the product offering is definitely what is winning over customers. Another question that I'm reading as well from John, talking about charging rates. I think we'll talk about pricing, in some specific examples that
Hmm.
that we have, down this presentation. But briefly, we haven't seen people being price sensitive, right now, and they are not optimizing for that necessarily today. So once again, the convenience of the location, the product is factored in. I use them to refer to the four P's of marketing: product, place, promotion, and price. If the
Hmm.
product is great, if the place, is convenient, for people, to stop by. If the promotion is good, meaning that it's sufficiently, visible. For people, it's not hidden in the back of the parking lot or behind, a dumpster. And then the price is also another thing. But in these four P's of marketing, price doesn't seem to be the decisive factor. Just a quick note, based on the comment that we've seen.
And I agree. I don't think price is a differentiator yet.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do believe it will become. But we need to level the playing field on reliability and availability and accessibility. So we're not ubiquitously available chargers everywhere like we are gas pumps. But once the chargers are all equally reliable, and if you're comparing a couple sites where the amenities and the offer are similar or at least competitive, price could start creeping in. And one of the things we're starting to explore is what's the relationship between the loyalty programs that or the site retail host is offering, and can that tip the scales towards repeat visits? Can that mitigate eventual price sensitivity by creating that rewards program, that loyalty program that keeps them coming back? It's going to be interesting how it develops, but I think we'll get to a point where price matters. But yeah, like Florence said, we're not there yet.
Yeah. Okay. Really appreciate that. Great discussion. We could talk for hours on this slide in particular, but we're going to keep moving. So we released this report and people had some thoughts. It's not just Florent and John and I kind of opining on this. We got some really interesting and solid feedback from other leaders and folks in the industry. We kind of collected that into four main points. The first one, which I think is very fair, like, hey guys, was this just a report that looked at high port count stations and high port count stations getting more charging sessions? That isn't that interesting of a insight. And that's not the case, luckily. We kind of pulled on the right-hand side here the average number of ports at each of the different amenity types. And so you do see there is some variance, grocery, shopping malls, especially retail, et cetera, having more ports on average relative to things like travel, rest stop, auto services. These are dealers. And so from a site perspective, it kind of makes sense. Grocery, shopping malls, much larger parking lots, and then convenience and gas stations, smaller footprints. And so there is enough difference, though, on that 42 sessions per day in a grocery store versus the median, where 2.5 times more sessions per day are happening at these grocery store locations. And so we felt that that was a big enough difference where sessions per port per day wasn't as interesting as sessions per day at the station overall.
Yeah, overall, I want to build maybe on that, Alex, on
Yeah.
these stories, not necessarily a story only about port counts and like session, per category type. What we've been seeing through the numbers here is that 6% of the stations are currently nearby a grocery store, and yet we
Mm,
see the volume of session being pretty much double what we are seeing nationwide. So it seems to be like an untapped, opportunities to go and expand nearby grocery stores or, these categories here where people are going already and leverage that traffic to the benefit of the charge point operators. That's number one. Number two, we've run a story last year that was last summer. Maybe we'll run a sequel, for this summer. But we were analyzing the volume of charging stations at quick serving restaurants. And what we found out is that the first top 10 brands were driving 5% or 1 million charging sessions throughout the summer. So like
mm,
just 10 brands, can eventually attract, large volume of charging sessions throughout the summer. So people go there, not necessarily because there is a charging station, but to benefit the charging station when they arrive at destination.
mm.
So I think there is much more, to talk about here about these untapped opportunities of building out charging station nearby these categories of facilities.
Yeah. And that ties
And I think,
well into the, go ahead.
we've been focusing on sessions as well. How many customers visit a charging station over a period of time? Because the economics, as we'll talk about in a little bit, can be a little dicey when you're dealing with demand charges and stuff. And so when we were really focused on demand charges a couple of years ago, the idea was how many customers can you get to spread that out? But from a retailer perspective, the more customers coming to that charge point is the potential customers that you can convert to your store. Now, when you talk about a shopping center with a bunch of stores, okay, now you're competing for the same customer, but the more customers charging, the more opportunities they are. So I think that utilization, when we talk about percent utilization,
Hmm.
I've never found as much value in that as I have in total sessions per port, per station, per week, per month, whatever, because that really tells you what your customer count looks like. And if I've told the convenience industry is, look, if you have 400, if you have customers spending 400 hours on your forecourt every month charging and you can't sell them a soda, you need to rethink your marketing strategy. And so if you've got a captive audience for that amount of time, you need to figure out a way to really get them inside your store. And that's a huge opportunity for so many retail formats.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, really interesting. We started to see that initial kind of expansion to kind of bring the walls closer. I'll use Walmart again as the example, kind of integrating the charging experience that they're building out directly into their ecosystem. And so you see even things like paying for the session with the app, getting groceries delivered to your car while you're charging. It is really just like a different business model and a different customer need that retailers are starting to realize, hey, we need to start thinking about this. Um, some of the other feedback we got, we kind of addressed the pit stop charge versus the weekly grocery run. There are different profiles of customers. And so the family on a road trip traveling 300 miles that day is going to need a couple bathroom breaks, a couple meals, and to recharge their car a couple times during that trip. And that's different than, say, a weekly recharge as you get your groceries or other daily, weekly kind of habits that you kind of build into your routines.
And
Alex,
maybe
Yeah.
on that,
on that,
oh,
good
go
one.
ahead, John. Okay, I'll take
On
it.
the
So, oh shoot. Okay, I'll take it. So on this one here, so there was a comment, that we've seen on the slide before, when people were sharing, ahead of the webinar, some of the comments and questions. One of
Hmm.
them was people are going to be rational. If they can charge at home, if they can charge at the office, why would they eventually come to the grocery store? I mean, for
Hmm.
for a charging experience. And I think what we're talking about here is that this is not an exclusive experience. It's
Yeah.
not like you're going to charge at the grocery store and then that's it. That's the only charging station where you're going to. But I think it's really an addition. And if, once again, the four pieces of marketing are working, and if the product is right and everything else is right, people are going to enjoying that as a supplemental options into their charging options that they will have. So that's what I wanted to add, right here. Sorry, John.
That's that
no,
that's that convenience
absolutely. And
element.
yeah, I think the habitual charging pattern we're going to see increase. And we've all three of us we've talked about this before. Used EVs are much less expensive than new EVs. They are much more reliable than was forecast 5 years ago. They're quality vehicles, and I think they're opening up a cast of drivers who previously were costed out of the market. You have people who've wanted to buy an EV who couldn't afford a new one. And so now they can buy a used one that's a quality vehicle. They may also not have the wherewithal to have a vehicle, a home with a garage to charge at home. So I believe that the percentage of EV drivers who will not be able to charge at home is going to go up quite a bit, which is going to
Hmm.
make these habitual charging runs so much more important. And it'll be interesting to watch the data over the next 2 years to see if those more suburban charging stations start seeing a lot more uptick because of the demographic change in the EV driver.
Yeah, great point. Okay. The other pieces of feedback that we saw, some questions on data and seasonality. I think we kind of addressed that. There's always going to be kind of different spikes. Obviously, we're in the middle of summer right now, biggest driving season. As folks are out on road trips, warm weather gets folks going. And then the other spike that we see is around Thanksgiving and Christmas. That plays out for different retailers differently. Sure, there's some more grocery purchases, but there's a lot more travel. And so travel centers, gas stations, convenience stores see more of those spikes than quick service restaurants or groceries kind of do. And then last, I already talked about it, kind of impact of NEVI and the state programs. These programs are incentivizing the use of EV charging stations by placing them in lower utilization locations. And so there is some program dynamics where no, they're not putting it in the middle of downtown LA because public stations don't need to be incentivized there because there's a ton of adoption and it's a great place to put chargers anyway. And so many retailers' first experience may have been with those NEVI programs, either being a site host or kind of owning the infrastructure themselves. And so that does kind of influence the experience of these retailers on their first or early EV charging deployments.
It's
Okay.
funny when the NEVI was first announced, I got a couple calls from some retailers going, "Hey, John, want to get my share of the federal dollars." I'm like, "Okay, why?" "Well, I want to put in chargers, but I want my share." So I looked at their market, go, "You don't have any EVs registered in your states, but I want my share of the money." And so there was that huge increase in interest once the funds were announced. But to your point, I mean, I don't think that the NEVI investment had the huge impact we thought it
Hmm.
would, because you still had to invest your own money, and you
Yep.
sometimes had put it places where there wasn't demand.
Yeah.
And so on an ROI basis, when it's really company money going in to build these stations, making sure you understand what your throughput is, making sure you understand what your economics are to make sure you can make money. Because
Mhm.
let's be honest, nobody's going to install chargers for a loss leader. They want to make money on it. And so we have to make sure we understand all these dynamics, which is why I think the study you guys did is fantastic, because it really helps people think about what do you have to do to build a site that is going to turn a profit for you.
Yeah. Great point.
We have a
Okay.
lot to cover, Alex, as well, and I see like a lot of questions on the right side. Maybe we'll jump to these later
Yeah.
on, but I know you want to
Yeah.
get maybe to some of the specific examples, which might be very helpful for folks on the call.
Yep. So all of the charging stations that we reviewed operate under some operating model. As you see on the screen, there are a couple different ones that we've observed. There may be some others, but as you kind of move from left to right on the screen, you're taking less risk. And so the leftmost is kind of the most risk, but also the most upside, most reward, and most control. And so there are some operators who've chosen to directly purchase hardware and own the entire experience. And there are some other retailers who've chosen to say, I'm not getting involved at all. Here, charge point operator, you can use part of my parking lot to run your EV charging station. We're not getting involved. And so in the examples that we'll see, we've chosen three sites that kind of give a representative example of the different amenity categories that we looked at. None of these are electric era stations. I'll put that out there. We are really trying to say, what does this look like for a wide variety of different retailers in a number of different locations? So let's get into it. The first example that we looked at is a big box retailer in Dallas, Texas. Texas is the third highest state for EV adoption. The Dallas-Fort Worth area is seeing huge EV charging demand. We're seeing a lot of interest and excitement in EV charging expansion here. And this station in particular has the big box store as the anchor. That's here. You've got the charging station right here, and you see there are a number of different amenities nearby and the out parcels and across the street. This retailer has chosen to go with 4 NACS ports, the Tesla connector, and 4 CCS ports. And so, Floron, if you were just looking at this site, anything that you see or observe from just the initial station details that would influence how you think about this location?
Well, I think this location is like a prime location for the number of amenities nearby. We're seeing that there is a strong correlation in between, the location and the surrounding options that people have when they spend, their time charging.
Hmm.
There is a lot that we can dive into with our data set where we can see the opening hours of stores and
Mm.
the charging events as well, happening. Obviously, you have, less people charging in the middle of the night.
Hmm.
Um, But we do see a correlation when there is like a Starbucks or another stores like open 24/7. We see like slightly more consistent charging events happening at that time. The other thing is like 8 ports is probably typical, for this charging station at a big store. Sometimes you see slightly more than that. The average for non-Tesla charging station nationwide is about 4.5 charging ports
Mm.
per station. So this one is slightly on the higher end. I'm also assuming that you can charge 8 cars. So these are probably dual like NACS and CCS. People can charge maybe from 8 of these charging cables simultaneously. And it seems to be very close by as well.
Yeah.
Maybe within 50 meters of the entrance of that big box retailer. So it's a prime location, I believe, for high demand charging in Texas.
Yeah. So from the parent data, we are estimating 24 sessions per day from tens of thousands of charging sessions. There's an expected kilowatt hour per session. How much energy are you purchasing? That's around 36. We've seen that number slowly tick up over the years. Last year or two was 35. Now we're looking at around 36, 37. As cars improve their battery kilowatt hours and as charging speeds increase, you're going to see that number tick up slowly as well. And then this retailer publishes their pricing. They have a daytime price and a nighttime price. And that's an interesting dynamic of trying to incentivize off-peak charging. They may be on a utility rate that incentivizes off-peak charging. They may be trying to incentivize outside of peak hours to get folks to come and charge. And so with a route where you are the direct owner of the hardware, you get a lot of control over the pricing and kind of can perform that optimization or incentivize EV drivers through those pricing mechanisms. I calculated based on my utility research and expected utility cost around $7,000. Texas is a deregulated market, and so it's a little bit harder to kind of guess at this, but the retail cost in Texas is 51 cents a kilowatt hour for an EV driver. And so this station is coming in a little bit below that at the daytime hours and well below that at the nighttime hours, driving that utilization and potentially driving those off-peak charging sessions. And so when we do the math and we look at this station, you're looking at around a gross revenue of almost 11,000 bucks a month. And that is just from selling electricity to customers and does not take into account the additional benefits that the store may see from converting those EV drivers into and inside the store. John, any takeaways here on this station and these revenue numbers?
You and I chatted about this before. The revenue is gross. So if you back out the expected utility months, you're down to 3,700 a month. And then whatever
Mm-hmm.
your O&M costs are. So it's still, you got eight, 8 ports over a month. That's still kind of slim margins, but it's
Mm-hmm.
still positive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you mentioned we're not counting on any sales uplift associated with those customers
Mm-hmm.
or the elimination of leakage to another big box that has chargers.
Mm.
So if you're making positive money on the installation, you assume you're making positive on your other operations as well. So from an economic standpoint, it's heading in the right direction to being
Mm-hmm.
able to pencil out a positive ROI.
Yeah.
Alex, maybe one question that I see on the channel as well related to the volume of sessions, and
Mm-hmm.
this is session per station that you reported on that slide.
That's right.
What has been your experience about signage, maybe, or clear marking on
Mm.
the parking lot about this is an EV charging stall, like so that people don't eventually ice, meaning like park a non-EV car when people can go where people can go and charge. Do you still see that as an issue with partners that you're working with right now, just like saving that space just for EV charging, potentially, helping operators to increase the volume if there is like an open spot available
Yeah.
for EV drivers?
Yeah, it's a good question. I kind of see signage and discoverability as a whole as kind of there's a couple different parts. There's one, make sure that your EV drivers can find your station. More and more these days, they're finding that on their app using their phone or even directly in the stall, or sorry, in their car. But other signage is for making sure that only EV drivers use the stations. And you can paint, you can install signage, but what it really comes down to is, are there enough parking spots on the property as a whole to make sure that the rest of the customers who are coming to this location don't feel like they can't park there? And there are sites that we just have to DQ right off the bat because parking lot constraints are real. And especially in those smaller quick service restaurants or gas station convenience store locations, there are a lot of sites that won't work right now. We're starting to see the first kind of idea of placing chargers under a canopy, under the fuel island, and that will bring more space and leave more parking in the front or on the side of the stores. We're not there yet on large nationwide rollouts under forecourt EV charging, but you're starting to see that with folks like Iona, who do put a canopy up and have dedicated spots for EV chargers and really are kind of driving a customer experience where they don't feel like they're in the back by the dumpsters. And it's kind of pulling them more towards the front of the store.
Your point there, we're doing a survey, we're doing work right now, talking to customers in our qualitative set where we're doing some focus groups. Customers did express interest in coverage. And
Hmm.
I always thought it was during inclement weather, but you're in Texas, it could be 110 degrees there.
Yeah.
If you're going to be sitting in your car, maybe not at the big box, but you're sitting in your car for 30 minutes, or even coming back out to your car after 30 minutes, having it under shade is a good thing. Having it under shade during thunderstorms or hailstorms or snowstorms, all those canopies are something that people are looking at. The question we're going to ask next is, if a retailer did that, would you use them more often? It's
Mm-hmm.
great to say, yes, I like it, but will it generate return? The
Mm-hmm.
other thing you mentioned is availability.
Mm-hmm.
People want to know when I pull up, is that site available? To Florence Park, I want to make sure there's no ICE vehicles parked there. But when I pull in, it says there's 8 spots. How many are operational? How many are available? I don't
Yep.
want to have to wait in a queue for 30 minutes.
Yep. That's where making sure that your station is well connected to mapping apps. You pull up
Yep.
Google Maps today and you can see, oh, 3 of 7 stalls are utilized, or 3 of 8 stalls are used. That means 5 stalls for me if I show up right now. That just gives you the confidence to say, okay, I'm not going to wait if I arrive. I know I'm already going to wait 20 or 30 minutes or have this kind of 20 or 30 minute period baked in for my charging session. And so kind of making sure your digital signage is up to date and accurate with the actual operations of your site is really important.
Yep.
I'd like to come back maybe to two things on the chat that are worth probably sharing here. So the
Hmm.
volume of session per day, I agree with Guy, on the comments, probably on the lower end of what you could expect on a big box retailer. When looking, and I don't have, that specific location in mind, when looking at the specific attributes of that charging station, it looks like probably a brand new charging station using like
Mm.
dual NACS and CCS. And what we see is that it takes time for people to eventually build the habit and eventually use and ramp utilization at a given charging station. We've done
Hmm.
another analysis at Paren about what is the average utilization rate 90 days after the station opens, and the results were absolutely fascinating. And we see that independently of how big the station is for non-Tesla operators, it takes time to eventually build toward the 16% nationwide average of utilization. You
Hmm.
need to have, the right signage, you need to have the right promotion, in place so that people know that there is a charging opportunity there for them. So I think the 24 sessions per day for that specific station, I would agree, is on the lower end and is probably a reflection of a recently opened charging station, probably just like a few months old in here. The other thing that I wanted to point into the comment is about pricing and the difference in pricing in between daytime and nighttime. we see a lot of different we see a lot of operators using time of use as an incentive to drive a different type of persona to their charging stations. And
Mm,
so these are probably rideshare drivers who are driving during the day, and then at night they enjoy, charging for cheaper rate nearby, big box retailer when they can go and do their groceries, before heading back home or just grabbing a snack or coffee or whatnot. So, pricings also like do appeal to different type of EV drivers, and they also optimize on the price that people pay for utilities. So, just
Yeah.
building on these two comments that I'm reading, on the side of the chat.
good call. Okay, next site. This is a travel center in Eastern Washington. It is on I-90. There are three nearby amenities, including the travel center, QSR, and another business. The travel center is obviously the anchor, and the same number of ports, four NACs, four CCS ports. So we had the neighborhood location, the metro site. This is much more of that corridor location where Eastern Washington is not the EV hotbed of adoption that other parts of Washington are. And so you're really relying a lot more on pulling folks off the highway. Um, with that, there is definitely less utilization expected at this site. Same number of kilowatt hours per session expected. And because it kind of commands that, it can command a price premium because there really aren't other options nearby. And so you see the difference in economics when you have a location that is more kind of um, filling a gap in a charging route. And for Washington, much lower electricity costs. We have a lot of hydropower here, and so that reduces the amount of both demand charge as well as energy cost. And so for this site, you're looking at less estimated gross revenue per day. And it's interesting how these economics are different than a much larger big box site. And so, what does this mean for this operator, John, when you think about kind of deciding to roll this out here?
I mean, it's your typical layout with a travel center and trying to capture the on the road drivers. I'm seeing that pop up a lot more frequently throughout the country.
Hmm.
8 sessions a day per site, that's pretty low. And so I think most retailers are like, well, what's the value in that? We need to know exactly what they're charging and the cost to figure out that your estimated utility cost 2,000 a month is not much. So you're still, if your estimates here are accurate, they're still netting 25 to 3,000 a month. Okay.
Hmm.
Is that meeting their ROI estimates and their requirements? They are positioned to capture the traveling customer.
Hmm.
And so having EV to make sure they don't lose those traveling customers have switched to an electric powertrain is probably a primary consideration for them to make sure that they are the one-stop shop for everybody going down the highway. So while the utilization is pretty low, if the economics that you've laid out here are accurate, then I think, for that retailer, you got to capture, okay, those 8 customers, what are they worth to me inside the store? And what would I have lost if I didn't have charging for them? And that's kind of
Hmm.
your opportunity cost rather compared to your overall utilization estimate.
The travel center as a business is much more likely to kind of capture that EV driver when they're on site because it's not like they're walking to 10, 11 different amenities nearby. And
Right.
so if the travel center retailer can increase that connectivity between the charger into maybe the QSR that's franchised there or the food and drink and coffee and snacks offerings that are just a 24/7 option. That's kind of expanding that value that you can derive from an EV charging station.
And the customer at a travel center is less likely to sit in their car for 25 minutes.
Yeah.
They're much more likely to have to go inside the store
Yep.
to use the restroom, find a snack, find something to drink. So,
Yeah.
it really is that, am I going to lose those 8 customers or am I not? And then
Hmm.
what is each customer worth to me to make those economics make sense?
Hmm.
Yeah, it's very fascinating here. I mean, to compare the economics as well from the previous case, that seems to be working much more favorably here. If you are growing, $4,800 a month, but the cost of goods sold, or at least, the utility cost is about $2,000.
Hmm.
The gross profit might be slightly higher percentage-wise than what you could have seen on the previous store. So previous case. So that's a very interesting thing. Not counting, as John mentioned, like the additional sales for these customers within the store. So yeah, fascinating economics here.
Okay, one more example, and then we'll open it up for questions from the group. This is a site in Springfield, New Jersey, a convenience store with plenty of hot food options. There are 11 nearby amenities, and this site has actually gone the site host route. And you may be able to guess, but this is 8 NACS ports. And so it is a different type of operating model where a third party comes in, installs their own chargers, and the convenience store in this case isn't controlling the pricing, isn't kind of interacting with the drivers directly via an app or on a screen. They're kind of leaving that up to the charge point operator. And so this site, seeing an estimated 31 sessions per day, uh, lower by a pretty significant margin on the price for EV charging for the retailer. But interestingly, New Jersey has some of the highest commercial electricity rates in the country, really high overall from dollars per kilowatt hour and high demand charges. And so this site, while it makes 14,000 a month, potentially more in the sale of electricity, it costs a lot. And so what does this mean for a retailer choosing to let a third party onto their property? And how does this play out both for the retailer and for the charge point operator?
So typically in this situation, if it is a site host and a CPO, the site host has no exposure to the cost of the electricity.
Hmm.
So the charge point operator is taking all the economic risk of the chargers themselves, and the retailer is either benefiting from a lease on the real estate or just benefiting from the transactions inside the store. So you start
Hmm.
thinking about Jersey is a pretty strong EV market.
Hmm.
From a business perspective, it makes a lot of sense to have chargers at a convenience store that has a dynamic offering. The question runs into, okay, you eliminate your risk exposure to the utility costs and the economics, but do you lose your relationship with the customer? And so, what I've spoken with retailers about often is if you're going to go the third party host relationship, explore how you can share customer information so you can tap into your own loyalty program and capture that. And we're looking at doing a project this in the next couple months where we're going to try to combine some CPO loyalty programs with retailer loyalty programs to try to really benefit the customer and benefit both vendors. There's so much walled garden in terms of I'm not going to let you have my customer data. And we see that in every single business vertical. But when you are co-located, combining the loyalty and rewards programs for your customers can only enhance their experience and your own. And
Hmm.
so, in this situation, yeah, your risk exposure is pretty much gone, but your upside is not as strong as it could be. But
Yeah.
again, in Jersey, not having chargers at some point is going to be a detriment to you if you don't have them installed.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I see a couple good comments. One, do we factor in demand charges? JCP&L, yes, definitely high demand charges. And to put on my electric era hat instead of my moderator hat real quick, that is exactly what we do. When there are sites that would perform well from an EV charging utilization perspective, but face high demand charges or grid constraints, coming in with a battery system is a great way to kind of reduce your demand charge exposure, use that battery to lower how much you're pulling from the grid at any one time, optimize around time of use rates and arbitraging that energy. And that's how a good site that may not pencil just from the utility rate, you can actually make those economics work. And then Devin's point, Tesla does make cars and is very interested in getting more cars sold. And a great way to sell more cars is to give folks cheap ways to refuel those vehicles. And so looking at the overall picture of what is this charging network for? What are they trying to do? Are they incentivizing getting folks to the site? Are they incentivizing selling more vehicles? It it's a broader question that influences how that charging network is going to show up on your site if you're third-party site hosting.
That is great. Do we want to open to more questions? I
Yeah,
think this was the last slide, wasn't it?
it is.
That's
So
wow.
we're doing good on time. Please ask any questions you feel you want to chat about. I'm scrolling back to see.
Maybe talking about pricing, I'm just looking at the latest number that we pulled earlier this morning from Paren on pricing. So the average price per kilowatt hour in the US for non-Tesla charging station is about 53 cents per kilowatt hour.
Mhm.
For Tesla and Tesla owners on the supercharging networks, that is 39 cents. So it is significantly cheaper. If you
Mhm.
want to charge at a Tesla supercharging stations, and if you are a member, you're paying a premium, and the premium is on average 57 cents per kilowatt hour in the US.
Wow.
So interesting, gap in between member and non-member pricing at Tesla. And most of the time, I mean, on average, you end up paying less at non-Tesla charging station if you don't have a Tesla.
Yeah. And that membership, is that like $15-20 a month to be a part of the
Yeah,
Tesla network?
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And then for those supercharger for business sites, I saw something recently about like Tesla deciding to prioritize just supercharger sites and like turning on or off the ability to view a
Hmm.
third-party Tesla for business site in their app. Um, what does that mean for station visibility and retailers who've chosen to kind of explore further on the Tesla for Business program?
Is that a question for me or?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't have the answer,
Okay.
not
Yeah.
necessarily to that. Yeah.
I mean, I can speculate. Look, I mean, you put in chargers. Um, that's one of the challenges. Right now, we know where all the gas stations are because we put 20-foot signs on the corner, right? And they're on every corner. We know where they are. There's
Yeah.
152,000 of them in the country. There are not 152,000 charging stations. There's what 75,000 ports.
Mm.
So visibility is critical. If
Hmm.
you are in a vehicle and you have an app and you're trying to find a place to charge and certain charging stations are blocked from your view, that is a huge detriment to the driver experience. It's a huge detriment to the charging station operator's experience. Visibility is critical until we
Hmm.
have chargers that are ubiquitous and we have
Hmm.
redundancy. So if you pull up to a charging station and they're all full, they're broken, you can go across the street and charge. Until we have that everywhere, visibility and knowing where these are so you can plan accordingly is absolutely critical.
You think about how gas stations are competing for the right turns at this point
Mm-hmm.
because there's
Hmm.
three sites, and if you can turn right instead of having to turn left, your site is more utilized. We're so not there yet on the EV charging side, which is why
Right.
it's so critical to be visible in those digital spaces where EV drivers are finding their sites. And then it's kind of that waterfall of, can you find the site? Great. Are you there and it works well the first time you plug in? Great. Then what am I going to do on site? And once you get all three of those right, you'll see kind of uh, the economic case make more and more sense.
Here's one more element that we just talk about quite a bit, and it is how many sites do we need?
Mm,
We all know if you drive an EV, you have ways of finding charging.
hmm.
There's apps, there's your in-dash, whatever it is. You can find where to charge if you have an EV because you have to, and you know how to use those. For the on the fence customer who
Hmm.
might be thinking about an EV but doesn't know how much charging is out there, we need to overbuild the charging inventory to give them confidence that they will always be able to find a charger.
Hmm.
Once they have the EV, they'll understand, but before they buy that EV, they're not going to know. And so I've always talked about, okay, how many do we need? People say we need X number, X million, whatever. We need probably 2 or 3 times more than we probably need to convince the customers that they're never going to be stranded. And
Hmm.
so visibility, not just through apps, not just through digital platforms, but physical visibility. Driving down the road, if I see on this one street, there's 6 places I can charge. If I'm going to go buy an EV, I have confidence I know on that street I can charge. I don't want to have to search an app before I go to the dealership to find out if I'm able to charge. I need to know that internally. So we need to do a better job of marketing our charging locations visibly on the street. Maybe not
Mhm.
for the EV drivers, but for the potential EV drivers. So when
Yeah.
they buy the car, they already know where they're going to charge without having to think
Yeah.
about it.
You pull off the highway and you see the blue signs, food this way, gas this way. I was
Right.
driving north of Seattle last week and I saw my first EV this way sign. So they're few and far between, but that point on just it's not for the EV driver necessarily that sign helps someone who's on the fence think about, hey, this is near my exit. I can fit this into my routine. And that belief and that idea that there's something close by that fits into their daily habits in life is what will get some of these not super early adopters, super tech folks who are ready to dive into something new. That's the next chasm that we're crossing with EV adoption today.
The other thing we have to think about, this is my pet peeve. You pull off the highway to go get something to eat, and it says, this restaurant's down this way. So you start driving, and it's 5 miles.
Yeah,
If I have to charge and it's 5 miles off the highway, I'm not going to be happy. So
yeah,
transparency as to proximity is important too, because we
Mhm.
have to instill confidence in the
yeah,
drivers and potential drivers if this industry is going to take off.
yeah. Great point.
Looks like you might have more question about EV signage, Alex, in the chat, but at the same time, we might also want to
Mm,
wrap up. But um, it seems to be like a to be continued conversation, maybe on getting more traffic to charging stations.
I agree. I agree. We will wrap things up here. Been a great conversation. Florent, John, really appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining. Thank you all to the folks on the call for your really engaged questions. We really enjoy kind of diving into this data. We will be sharing out the recording. We will be sharing the details of this report more. So, and in the future, we're going to be doing this again because this is something that we really care about and think that more and more retailers will be caring about this too.
Thank you so much, John,
Thanks,
Alex.
Alex.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Florent.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
everyone.
everyone. Really appreciate it.
Bye.
Take care.